Simply Christianity, Chapter 10, Flattering Misconceptions. I said earlier that many people hold in their minds their own version of Christ. It is as if he has become an abstract work of art, and we, as the critics, attempt to derive our own private meaning from the vague and ambiguous contours of his life. Some people interpret Christ's life in a highly critical way. Melbourne academic Peter Singer, for example, accuses Jesus of condoning cruelty to animals based on Luke chapter 8, verses 32 to 33. But most of us hold quite positive, even flattering, interpretations of Jesus. I was recently involved in a discussion about Christ's life on the ABC radio station Triple J, and I was amazed at just how many of those who called in to make a comment held Jesus in great esteem. They lavished compliments on him like the greatest teacher ever, the model of love, the great rebel against organised religion, an inspiring leader, a defender of the powerless, and so on. I sat there in the studio thinking, who would ever have thought that Jesus was such a celebrity here in such a seemingly unreligious country like ours? These compliments reminded me of the popular views of Jesus in his own day. When Jesus asked his followers, "Who do the crowds say that I am?" they replied, "John the Baptist. Others say Elijah, and others that an ancient prophet has risen up." Each of these opinions was quite flattering, since John the Baptist, Elijah, and the rest were great heroes of Israel's past. Associating Jesus with such great names was probably, in the minds of the crowd, something of a compliment. But flattering misconceptions can be every bit as much a hindrance to understanding Christianity as some of the more insulting ones. They allow us to keep our distance from Christianity without actually offending the memory of Christ himself. They're a kind of religious equivalent of the romantic, "I just want to be friends." If you've ever had this said to you, you will know very well that it is usually just a way for someone to avoid getting close to you without causing too much offence. There are many examples of this "I just want to be friends" attitudes towards Christ. In Islam, Jesus is seen as a prophet. On the face of it, this is quite a positive picture. But in reality, it means that Jesus is relegated by Muslims to a long list of prophets who were all made redundant by the arrival of their own prophet, Muhammad, 500 years after Christ. Again, in New Age philosophy, Jesus is thought of as a truly enlightened man, but in doing so, New Agers are able to place Christ on the shelf next to 1,000 other enlightened ones in the huge New Age supermarket of ideas. Some of our own less religious compliments have the same effect. By calling Jesus a great teacher, we often relegate his significance to the realm of ethics, as if he just came to give us a list of do's and don'ts for happy living. In calling Jesus a great rebel against organised religion, we all too easily find our own excuse for never going to church to hear any more about him. Very few people ever reject Jesus outright, but we're pretty good at saying we just want to be friends, and no more. The other thing about these complimentary views of Jesus is that they can make us think that our response to him is an adequate one. But if Jesus is really the Christ, the one who speaks and acts for the Creator himself, calling him a great teacher, an inspiring leader, or a model of love is hardly the appropriate response. It would be like responding to a lifesaver who'd just rescued me from certain drowning with the words, "You're a jolly good swimmer, aren't you?" On the face of it, this is a compliment, but it is hardly adequate. A friend recently told me about a couple she knows who own an exclusive jewellery store in Sydney. One day, while the wife was attending the shop, a mild-mannered American gentleman walked into the shop looking to buy a pink Argyle diamond worth $20,000 or more for his wife. Luckily, they happened to just have the item he was after. As the credit card transaction was being made, the shop's computer froze. The man leant over the counter, asked her a few questions about the operating system, and made some suggestions to get the system up and running again. Sure enough, the computer began to work again. The woman responded, "You know a bit about computers, do you?" To which he nodded and said, "Yes, a little." He walked out of the shop with his diamond. Later, when the woman's husband arrived at the shop, he asked how the sales had been for the day. When she explained that she'd sold the pink Argyle diamond to an American, he was intrigued to find out who the man was. Looking through the transaction records, he found the receipt and was surprised to discover they had sold the diamond to a Mr. Bill Gates, CEO of Microsoft. The woman felt a little silly when she remembered what she had said to him. "You know a bit about computers, do you?" In reality, this is the man who practically set the agenda for the computer industry worldwide. Some of us do a similar thing with Christ. We compliment him with the opinion that he knows a bit about life. In reality, though, if Luke is to be believed, Jesus is the one God sent into the world to set the agenda for human life. He is the Christ. When Jesus asked, "Who do you say I am?" you can be sure he wasn't fishing for compliments. He was asking those around him to search their hearts and intellects, evaluate all that they had seen, and arrive at the appropriate conclusion. To recall the Joe Louis incident, the 9 chapters of Luke we've read so far function as a kind of business card for Jesus. Luke hands it to us, his readers, and awaits his response.